show for you today. This is not live. It's actually Wednesday. We are doing this show today because there are some complications for tomorrow. We will not be able to do a live show. So we got a little something different for you today. We are going to go over Mark Porter's top 10 prospects that he has reviewed so far in our Buckeye in the Sky evaluations. And that's from the very start. Mark's been here about 3 years. So it's going to be 10 guys, some current, some from the past, everyone you will know. Most became Buckeyes. And we will get into that. Be very cool. Bill Kurlick is here to offer some context, and then we will go from there. But first, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, you know this. I think I speak for most men when I say we want to have better sex. And for the sake of our partner, we may need to have better sex. That's why we've partnered with our friends over at Joy Mode. Joy Mode makes all natural and science-backed supplements dedicated to helping men perform better across their core functions. Their trademark product, the Sexual Performance Booster, is every man's solution for increased blood flow, stamina, and performance. All ingredients have been assessed in peer-reviewed journals. All ingredients studied and researched in humans. You can redefine your intimacy and use joymode.com for 20% off with code Bucknuts. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code Bucknuts at usejoymode.com. Once again, go to usejoymode.com/Bucknuts. JOYMODE.com/Bucknuts. Great sex solved naturally. All right. Bringing in our guys here, Mark Porter and Bill Kurlick. Like I said, the Devin Sanchez crowd will not be here to carry us today, so we are all on our own. But we have something very cool planned for you. Mark has been here low about 3 years technically. He was following us around for about the 15 before that, begging for a gig. Finally relented. But seriously, folks, what we offer here with Mark is an advanced scout, a legitimate scout doing stuff that no other site has, and that's why we brought him on. And we've been able to get a head start on guys so you know what you're getting before you get them. Now, Ohio State doesn't get everybody we have done a review on, but they do get a lot of them. So we've got 10 guys today that we're going to go over their video from high school, and Mark's going to kind of create like a little Hall of Fame so far for what we've gone through. Mark, if you could just let us know kind of how you went through it, what made a guy stand out from another, and generally when you're looking for it, what were you looking for?
Yeah, I think we had over 250 videos to pick from. I mean, we really have done a lot of evaluations over the past 3 years. A lot of kids that were offered by Ohio State didn't commit, went other places. But a lot of this was based on their high school highlight tape. You know, going back, I love Taylor Decker's, I love Marshawn Lattimore's, and those were all pre-Bucknuts. But since we started this feature, Eye in the Sky, I didn't remember all the names, but certain names when you scrolled, I immediately said to myself, oh, that was a film. That was film. So I think we're going to start alphabetically, and I think the first player we're going to look at is Brandon Baker.
Unfortunately.
And when this kid burst onto the scene, boy, I mean, yeah. I mean, he is a no-brainer, and, you know, just the feet and the way he throws guys around, I think it's pretty easy to say this kid's going to be in the NFL someday. It's just a matter of when. And, you know, I think if we watch 3 or 4 plays of all these, you kind of get an idea because we have a bunch of them to go through here. But one of the best offensive linemen we've watched. I mean, I think that's fair to say. We actually did a day where we compared Taylor Decker's, you know, film to him, and Taylor Decker is one of the best in the NFL. And we liked Brandon Baker more, and we thought it made Taylor Decker look pedestrian, which we know that's not true. So starting off with Brandon Baker, I'll get the next one queued up for you.
Hold on a sec, Bill. As we go through these, maybe you can, you know, hit us with. Thankfully, most of these guys are Buckeyes, but with Brandon Baker, I believe Ohio State. It was down to Ohio State and Texas. Was this an oily recruitment?
Yeah, I think that you could say the NIL was involved there and be very accurate about that. At one point early on, I think he might have even had 1 or 2 crystal balls for him to Ohio State, if I remember correctly. But as has happened at times, NIL got even more involved at the end, and he went the Longhorns' way.
I will say this: that was pre the foundation really hitting their stride.
Yep.
If we were to go through the Brandon Baker experience again, I think there's a very good chance he could be a Buckeye.
Yeah, they have figured out things to a much greater extent now, for sure.
No question. Number 2, not a Buckeye. Bill will love this one.
Bill, I know, did extensive coverage of Tackett Curtis, and his film was an internet sensation. This kid is lined up at safety, and he just takes off downhill at the snap of the ball. He was never a safety. This was a position designed to make him look great. I don't know any other safeties that run forward at the snap of the ball immediately. It's like a safety blitz on every play, unblocked to the ball carrier, and he smashes everybody. The fans loved him. Everybody who saw this film thought he was going to be a difference maker. I was kind of critical of it at the time, saying, this isn't your typical defense. This was a defense designed to make this player look like the next Brian Urlacher. And boy, I mean, with that 10-yard running start, he does some serious damage and puts his shoulder pads under people's chins. And I'm watching it again, I remember, I mean, this was a fun film for high school. And I'm sure Bill now can update us on, the latest with him. But boy, that was certainly an internet sensation when it came out.
I don't want to, Bill, before you go there, I don't want to mention that kid by name because I don't know who it was, but I've never seen someone do that to an offensive lineman, I don't think. That was criminal. Go ahead, Bill.
I will never forget the first time I put his huddle video, I think it was his huddle, whatever video it was, his video on our site. I said, something like, wow, you got to look at this. And he had at least 1 or 2 hits where the kid's helmet was flying off, 5-7 yards downfield after he hit the kid. And it was just unbelievable. But as you said, as Mark said, he's getting a running start and he just pulverizes in this first video I put on. As we know, he went to USC, but ended up in the transfer portal. Ohio State was interested in him again once he got to the portal, but not to the extent that they were ever probably going to land him that second time. More of a guy that could come and help, but not necessarily right away. And Tackett, wanted to go somewhere where he was going to get the play right away.
Where'd he land?
Gosh, I got to think about that for a second.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
I'll think about it. Give me a second.
Yeah. All right. One thing about him.
You don't have time to Google that.
Yeah, his video is up there in terms of like all-time high school videos with like Sam McGuffey. Do you remember the running back from Sci-Fair in Texas who literally jumped over somebody? There was a sensation vibe to that. But as you've seen, it didn't materialize at USC immediately. So sometimes these videos don't lead to where you need to be. Next up.
Wisconsin is the answer, by the way.
Good man. Good call, Bill.
That brings up a good point is I never made a high school evaluation of Travion Henderson. Yeah. I think that film was the huddle film was just watched, and that's it. But he was committed, and like not every player that committed, I think we did a video for in time.
Not early on.
Yeah, early on we were all over the place a little bit. But another exercise I like to do is when I watch Caleb Downs in high school, before we knew who Caleb Downs really was I right? Or was the evaluation, right? Or did we nail it, so to speak? And as I listened to this again, I felt the same excitement, and I was like, okay, I think we were in the right spot. But remember him on offense? They said there's talk of him at tailback this year, or there was like a little rumor that he may get a few carries. Well, here's where that may stem from. I mean, he is special with the ball in his hand. And I mean, this is at 185 pounds, and you can pretty fair to say he's probably stronger, faster than we're looking at right now on film. But boy, what a great player to get, and what a fun journey for him to actually end up at Ohio State after all the drama. Of course, the hitting will be somewhere on this film. I know I like to categorize plays in different ways, whether it's coverage or, interceptions first. But he is known for the thump. And I'm sure this film is going to provide the thump once we get into the clips where I think I see him beelining for someone now. And I think that's what we're going to see at Ohio State, that exact play of him coming out of the secondary, whether it's in run support and just putting his body up. Now, he's one of those guys, I think I remember saying, reckless abandon. He'll throw anything in there to get a piece of a running back, even if it's just, slapping an ankle out of there. I mean, he really sells out when he comes downhill. We also did an evaluation of him we're not going to watch, which was all of his Alabama highlights. Dan said this was strictly high school, so I wanted to stick with that.
Well, by the way, on the Curtis thing, one other thing, he's not a lock to walk right in there and start for Wisconsin, right? He's in a position battle right now where he's got a chance to start, but not a sure thing. But it will be interesting. He's at Wisconsin, so
we'll see him.
We're going to see him over the next few years. I
do think Caleb Downs is going to start.
I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Got a chance to meet him the other night at the foundation event, and he's one of those guys where you're like, Caleb Downs is going to be successful in football, whatever he wants to do. You know what I mean? One of those guys you talk to where I'm over 50, and you feel like you're talking to an adult, and it's impressive. So major coup. I mean, you can make an argument, best defensive transfer of all time. And it'd be hard to argue against that, at least before we see him on the field. Next up, another guy who was at the foundation thing and actually told me how to put on my magnet name tag because I couldn't figure it out. The great Emeka Egbuka.
Tell you what, I didn't even have to watch this one, and I remember there being so many one-handed catches and crazy catches. I couldn't believe he was in high school. Of course, we're starting out with him on defense here just to kind of check that out. But that's a heck of a play when you pick off a bubble screen. I mean, that break from 10 yards deep to sniff that out, I don't think I've seen that happen too many times. If we ever needed an extra corner.
Oh, he could play corner now.
Yeah. I mean, you forget how special most of these athletes are coming out of high school. And I'm pretty sure we're in for a bunch of unbelievable touchdowns here over the next portion of this film. I think he had 21 or 22 touchdowns in a year or something crazy like that. And I know there's a one-handed catch. I don't know where it is, but I can remember him making a couple in the back of the end zone where his hands, I thought he was Marvin Harrison before Marvin Harrison got here. And then when you see Marvin Harrison's highlight film, you realize how special it was.
Oh, the out and up. That ball's late.
Yeah.
The thing that I remember on Emeka, one of my longtime cohorts in this business. He and I go way back from the days on the West Coast. He said that Emeka was one of the probably 2 or 3 best players, wide receivers, I should say, that he has seen on the West Coast in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty high praise.
And also, we are in for a big year from Emeka. Heading into last year, there was enough hype around him. I think it was suitable. Then, last year was what it was. Marv got most of the targets, and Emeka was battling injuries, but he still made some huge plays, the biggest play in the Notre Dame game. And if the spring game was any window into the season, that one-handed catch should be on display routinely. Speaking of being on display, this dude can play.
Yeah, when I started picking out videos, I was just picking out the names, and when I got done, I'm like, wow, you had 3 or 4 receivers. I think it was 3 in this top 10. Are you receiver biased? Is that what you like to watch? Is that what the fans like to watch? Or is it because Brian Hartline has been an unreal recruiter over the past couple of years that you've been here, that some of the players he's brought in have been these freaks of nature? I remember seeing Chris Henry for the first time. That's at West Claremont. Remember, he went to 3 different high schools in 3 years. He really moved around. So, we're not going to see him in Ohio. I won't have to cover him. And the reason he transferred, I think, is that's what they gave him during games, 5-yard hitches. And it really was a triple option offense where he was blocking. And this is him as a freshman in this clip. And these are the clips that I shot. So they're ground level. And I usually put those in so you could see his size and whatnot. But I actually concluded some of his freshman highlights. And there was like one of the first freshmen Ohio State have ever offered, or 8th graders. and he lived up to every bit of hype as a freshman. Like, these highlights would be good for a senior or someone in college playing high school football. So that's kind of the consideration here is of all the freshmen I've ever seen, his highlight tape and his ability held up the soonest and has just grown. I mean, we watched him at the Ohio State camp this summer. He is so long and his hands pull things out of the air. He really has a catch radius second to none with that frame.
So, Bill, this is a little different because he verbally committed to Ohio State before he left the state. But we've seen this before. Dorian Brew, I think everyone thought was going to be a Buckeye. Listen, when Dorian Brew was coming up, he was one of those guys everyone had penciled in. I definitely did. From Northmont.
He would have been a Buckeye. If he would have announced in April, he would have been a Buckeye.
But the complicating factor, he moved to Conroe, Texas. Chris Henry, like you said, high school 3, not in Ohio. It's modern day out in California. Now, look, if you're going to transfer to play high school football, hard to argue with that. I mean, if it's not the best football program in the country, it's certainly in that tier of great, legendary high school programs that play an incredible schedule. And like Mark showed, he'll probably get a more experience as a wide receiver in a professional style offense there. However, that does bring up the Oogie vibes, Bill, that he's out of reach physically. Your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I remember one of the times I was at a combine camp type event, and a college coach happened to be there, and Chris Henry was on the field, and a coach walked by me and he said, "Wow, just wow," as Chris Henry made play after play. He's that good. I mean, he really is. As far as the recruiting goes, he is recruiting for Ohio State right now, pretty aggressively, so to speak, and happily. That doesn't mean he's 100% locked to sign with Ohio State, but I would be surprised if he did. And there's a big difference between him and a lot of other guys that maybe move in that he's a wide receiver. And what better place right now is there to go if you're a wide receiver than Ohio State? And Brian Hartline's, he can put all the stats out there for you. NFL first round draft choices, Marvin Harrison Jr. and all that, and the development and everything. And again, I would be shocked if he did not go to Ohio State, end up at Ohio State.
Here's one stat they want to show him. Marvin Harrison's signing bonus.
Yeah.
That's a stat we'd all like to have in our category. Chris Henry, the idea of at some point in time having Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry on the field at the same time, and if all goes well, it'll be a junior and a freshman. That's hard to get your mind around. I've spoken to Andrew Ivins about that. I don't think this is a lock by any stretch, but Chris Henry will be in contention for the number 1 player in his class. He's already gotten into that mix where he's being considered. So next up, look at this guy. He is aged.
Yeah, I didn't get to do Chase Young or the Bosas. That was before I was here. But tell you what, Jack Sawyer was like the next Bosa type.
He was.
And this is what he looked like in high school. This is a dominating film. Seeing him and just looking at his body then, it's so funny to see how stringy he is. He absolutely dominated high school offensive linemen, whether it was with his technique, power, just run game. I mean, he shut down a side of the field where he was one of those players that could have left high school as a junior. You said to get off there. I mean, he was out of his stance and on his way to the backfield before anyone else on the field even moved there. Is he living up to that height? Will he be a top 10 pick or something, in the draft as we, go along here? We'll see. But, I mean, coming out of high school, that's what we were thinking. I remember some of the comments from this video were, top pick in the draft, the next Joey Bosa. I mean, I think he's sticking around this senior year, not only to beat Michigan, but to live up to that, status that we have praised him upon.
No, it was the Bosa brothers, and he followed right along. And, we always said it was the third Bosa brother. I'll say this after hanging out with him a little bit at the foundation event. He's one of the leaders of the team. He's an alpha, and he is a big boy now, man. I've been around some NFL players in my life. That is what they look like. He's a monster. There's two of him compared to that guy in the picture. He's got to be, I don't know how much he weighs. He's up there. And I don't know if he'll go in the first round. He's got a chance. I'll put it this way. If Jack Sawyer plays this season the way he did the last few games of last season, he'll have a chance to be a late first round draft pick.
Yeah,
right.
Speaking, try to add a little story about each one of these if I can.
Sure.
Number one, I saw Sawyer at the High State camps this summer, and boy, you are right. He is as Urban Meyer used to say, a grown ass man.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks fantastic.
He does.
But the story I always remember, the kid is a great kid. High school now. I spent a lot of time talking to him during his recruitment, going to see him play. I think I saw him play like over a couple-year period, like 5 or 6 times at least. So I'm out running on a Sunday morning. I try to run 3 to 5 miles every day, and except when I have plantar fasciitis, which I do right now. But Mark Porter's wife, the physical therapist, is treating me, so I'm getting better. So, but anyway, so I'm out running.
Pause.
And
shameless plug.
Pause.
What's that?
Shameless plug.
Oh, shameless, yeah. So fortunately, I'm out running. Fortunately, I'm close by. So I get a call. I look at my phone. It's Jack Sawyer on a Sunday morning, probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And he says, Mr. Kurlick, I really appreciate all the time you come and see me play. So I had to call you. He said, I'm committing to Ohio State. I said, that's no surprise, but I wasn't exactly expecting it right this minute on a Sunday morning. That doesn't happen. He said, but so I just wanted to make sure you're ready. And gave me, he said, told me some different things and everything. And I said, can you give me 5 minutes, Jack? I'll be back at home in 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. He said, I will. And he did. And I got back and had the story and everything. But, you appreciate kids like that. You really do.
All right.
So I'm guessing you were only a mile from home because you run a 5-minute mile?
Yeah, like I said, I was close by. I was less than a mile from home. I was close by, fortunately.
Here's my quick Jack Sawyer story, and I shared this with him the other day. When my son was a freshman in college, we had dropped him off maybe one time, and a couple of girls walked in. A couple of them were, cute little college co-eds, and I said, "Oh, who's that?" And he said, "Blah blah blah." Her boyfriend in high school was Jack Sawyer, and I said, "Never speak to her again." Okay, err on the side of caution here. So definitely don't be messing with him. And by the way, great dude. I noticed when he was signing autographs, little kids coming up, he is one of those guys totally comfortable in his own skin. Definitely a leader among the dudes, and one of the guys they kind of look to from a mature perspective when they're all gathered together. Very impressed. Very impressed. Marcus. Oh, look at this. I met him too. Good Lord.
I was going to say, this was good timing for some of these videos to pop up. Dan's got recent info on all these guys. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, number 1 player in the country. I don't need to hype him up. I don't need to say much. You just need to watch and enjoy what a creature this is. I don't even know if this is a human. It might be an alien. It might be a creature of some sort. The DNA should probably be tested. The comments from coaches, he's generational. Marvin Harrison is going to go into the NFL and probably have a 1,000-yard season his rookie year.
He better.
Jeremiah Smith might be able to go in the NFL right now and have a 1,000-yard season if he was with the right quarterback. He's every bit as good as Marvin Harrison. Emeka Egbuka, I thought he was the best I've seen until I saw Marvin and Jeremiah. So the rare air, and there's some rare praise for this kid, but boy, he's one of the players I'm excited to see this year. I got a chance to see him in practice, up close, and my kids were there. And, they're just coming of age with Ohio State, and, they don't know everybody or understand, the pitcher when you're young and all the players. We walked into the practice, and he caught a one-handed ball 10 feet in front of these kids. Talk about turning 2 human kids into fanboys in 10 seconds. It was like putting heroin in the main line And, like, more, Dad, show me this again. Like, what is this place called Ohio State where these guys make catches like this? And, I mean, he walked in and lived up to the hype. And guess who, my kids want to be when they play NCAA, 25 or whatever. Oh, yeah, it's Jeremiah Smith. I mean, he's that player right now for the younger kids and the generation. And I guess that's what I'm seeing with my kids at home. But, he deserves the praise.
I got a chance to talk to him the other night. He's very quiet, humble kid. Most of the youngsters were not boisterous. And, there were a lot of vets there too. He couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more humble. We got a chance to have a discussion about a podcast that was cut up and used against us. And I got to talk to him about that. And he agreed that I did, that no video on a podcast would ever affect his recruitment. The fact that it might have, we giggled about. And we also both commiserated that we were glad his recruitment was over. I said, man, look, I've witnessed some recruitments. Yours was nuts. And he's like, glad it's over and glad he's at Ohio State. So, Bill, Bud Elliott, hold on a second. Bud Elliott, one sec, Bill. I wanted to mention this too. Bud Elliott, if you listen to the Cover 3 podcast, they're going team by team. They did the preview recently of Ohio State with Dave Biddle, and Bud Elliott is based in Florida. And they all pretty much agree he's the best receiver they have ever seen, which is pretty good. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just saying, Ryan Day is very glad his recruitment is over, too. His heart be stilled from when he finally found out Jeremiah had actually signed.
Next up, and we all know this guy, if the Bucknuts Morning 5 has a player rep, it'll be Devin Sanchez, considering that the parents have been such wonderful devotees of the show. And this is, I hesitate to use the word prototype when talking about a player, just you put a lot of pressure on him. But if you were going to design a corner and the quality of play and what you wanted out of him, you could pop out Devin Sanchez, Mark.
Yeah, no disrespect to Bryce West, Aaron Scott, Jermaine Matthews. When I was looking through films, there's been a well-documented big-time list of corners that have signed recently. I picked Sanchez because he's the biggest, the longest. His film is probably the most impressive, but also, like Dan said, if it was a tie between those others, we would give the tiebreaker to Dietra. But boy, am I excited to see what this kid can do. And I'm also excited to see what those three that came in with him, Bryce West and Aaron Scott, can do in combination as a team. This is the greatest team sport. But, boy, give this kid a receiver, give him a side of the field. He has the ability and the skills. First-round ability, first-round size and talent, and he's at the right place to get developed and compete and all those things. And, we're keenly aware of, how serious his recruitment was and how his decisions were made. I'm excited for this kid, and, I'm sure Bill has a good story or two about him, and we all have some great memories from our podcast.
Bill, I think this recruitment went a little bit more smoothly for Ryan Day than Jeremiah Smith's, but I don't think that we should sleep on the fact that getting to go up against Jeremiah every day for Devin and Naeem Offord, who's coming in with him, definitely a bonus. But your thoughts on the recruitment, about as smooth as it could go?
Yeah, and the thing I look back, I believe it was the first time that I'm pretty sure had met Devin and D. Sanchez in person. It was early in his recruitment, so this was before it was at Ohio State's camp. And again, I think it was the first time they were there. And it was way before there were any crystal balls for him to go to Ohio State, or I think at that point, people were pretty skeptical. Would Ohio State be able to pull this guy out of Texas, the number one, as good as it gets and all that? And I remember talking to Dee. I introduced myself, talking to her and all, and she started talking about how important development would be in her son's decision. And they stuck with that. I mean, it's one of the things that they were really sold on as they went through the recruiting process was going against great players at Ohio State, being developed by coaches, and that whole thing. And it was one of the first things she talked about and they stuck with it the whole way through the process, and that's a big part of why Devin is a Buckeye.
Can't wait, literally. All right, can't wait for this guy either. Talked to someone the other day at the event. Boy, it really makes it much easier to put together a great recruiting class when the number one quarterback in the country goes to high school about an hour away. Mark?
I almost picked Quinn Ewers. I thought his high school film was lights out. He deserved it. There were Lincoln Keenholz had a heck of a film coming out of there. He dominated the state. Yeah, when you talk about just films, we've seen some guys. This was the one game I went to see Tavien, and these were all his throws from one game. Bill and I have been well documented saying we like to think we found Tavien first, or we were there like when he was a freshman at Toledo and he was a baseball pitcher and he only had one offer. And then, a couple years later, you have this Dante Culpepper, Cam Newton sized kid that, boy, just went straight up to the charts. And now he's being talked about as one of the top players in the country in his class. And he was unranked sophomore year, a 2-star or something, just bursting onto the scene. Everything you need to see, the whole package. He can run. It's fun. I get excited to see some of these kids, to see if, are we right? Did we really find this, next generational type player that right in our backyard? And, it's cool to see him come from a small school. Talking to some coaches at Ohio State, they're kind of mad at themselves for not being on him sooner. But, the joke was, how long it took me to get someone to go up to Bell Fountain? No doubt. Like they all wanted to go to Miami of Florida and the Texas and the California to see these 5 stars, but no one wanted to take the road up north just to see this kid that was an hour or so north of us. And boy, it's striking gold in your backyard.
Bill, you've seen a lot of quarterbacks come through Ohio. He's got to be up there in the mix.
Yep, no doubt. The thing that really is different, usually when you see these guys in high school, their physical transition comes after they get to Ohio State. It comes in that first year at Ohio State, or so they make a physical transition. They work, they get on the Ohio State diet, so to speak, all the calories, they get under Mick Marotti and all that. And you see an incredible change physically from when they got to Ohio State their first day to like a year and a half or so down the road, 2 years maybe. His physical change, Tavien's, has already happened. When he was a freshman, Mark talked about seeing him when he was out on the field. We were at Ohio State's camp. Skinny kid that I thought, hey, really good-looking athlete, but boy, he's a skinny kid and all. He's not that. He has made his physical transition already. He's a grown-ass man too right now, and he's only going into his senior year of high school. It's been incredible.
Yeah, if you look at the quarterbacks that were out at the Elite 11, now the number one guy in the country right now, Bryce Underwood out of the Michigan area, was not there, and is committed to LSU. But Tavien looked like a man among boys out there with the other players. There's some good-looking quarterbacks that did not look like that. Given the fact that 24/7 Sports bases its rankings, they're projecting for the NFL, I do expect him to eventually be the number one player in the class, just because, like Mark said, this is the prototype. Like, it's a prototype. He's a big dude, and it's good weight. He doesn't look bulky or weighed muscle bound like your Brady Quinns of the world, who are really aggressive in the weight room. He's loose. Looks like he can give you 25 points a game at like small forward position. So, last guy. Speaking of basketball players, JT Tuimoloau played for Rotary Select in the EYBL. So he played with some future NBA players. Stud athlete. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to have Bill pronounce his last name because he does it so perfectly.
Tuimoloau.
Tuimoloau.
Yeah,
it only took us 5 years.
Yeah, Bill, but I think I remember making this film and watching interviews of him, listening to him pronounce his name and trying to say it the way he did. So once you get past the name, boy, I'm glad we're ending this with this one. This might have been one of the best. He looked like a first-round talent.
He's lined up at tight end there.
Whoop. I mean, do we forget like how diverse some of these prospects were coming out of high school? You know, the other thing I noticed today is we got Bill to swear twice today, which, you know, he's going to have to go to church twice this weekend now. I think it's a banner day, and you have to pay some FCC fines to get this podcast released now. But
He might even put,
I'm going to say it. This is another
ketchup on his
grown-ass
burger.
man.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure grown-ass man is swearing. I might have to.
Yeah.
For you, Bill? For you?
For me,
For you,
maybe.
that's like
That's
the F word for you. But I'm saying JT was a grown-ass man in high school, and Bill and I did it again at a camp over the summer. He walks by, and you do that double take. Was that really JT that just walked by us? Like, could he possibly add it anywhere else? Shoulders, back of the arms. I mean, he's putting it on anywhere you could put it on. It still looks great. And as we talked about Jack Sawyer trying to be a first-round pick, well, JT might be the only guy in his way to get in front of him as a draft pick, because JT's got a bright future too when it comes to the NFL. So excited to see where both of those guys end up, and it's great to have them back. You know, when you build a defense, YSU went to a national championship when Bo Pelini was here. He had 2 defensive ends that went to the NFL. And all they said all year was that's what made that defense work. Those 2 guys, kind of suffocating the run game, and you couldn't run to either side. It was like pick your poison. Hopefully Ohio State has that coming this year.
I mean, they both stayed for a reason. You mentioned that. I had someone tell me at the foundation thing that they had walked by JT and Jack at one point, and we're like, oh my God, that's what men look like. Look, Michigan rode that to a championship last year, okay? They had like 3 guys on the team who were in their late 30s. So, I'm not saying these guys are like that, but they're built to win this year. A lot of these guys will be contributing. We hope you guys enjoyed this. Definitely enjoy Mark putting forth the effort. We will be back next Tuesday. Appreciate these guys stopping by. But before I leave, I've got to let you know about Manscaped. Sizzle alert. This summer, let the only thing smoking at your barbecue be the grill, not your grooming game. Get ready for the ultimate cookout season with Manscaped. Whether you're flipping burgers or cannonballing into the pool, make sure you look neat with the Performance Pack 5.0 Ultra. Fire up your grooming routine and keep it cool with Manscaped. Head to manscaped.com and use code Bucknuts for 20% off and free shipping. Once again, 20% off and free shipping with the code Bucknuts at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, manscaped.com. Use code Bucknuts. Manscaped, the perfect way to get your patties sizzling hot this summer. Have a good one, Bucknutters.